Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JacinioTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. And on today's show, we're going to be going through a very quick Bodo Glimt review as well as a Leeds preview. So we're going to do all that in one, hopefully in about an hour. After this show, I'll be on the Football Terrace for the Top 6 show. So make sure you guys follow me over there as well. And so uh, that game, you guys, was terrible. Like, let's just be real. Like, there's not much to talk about surrounding that game because I do think that this definitely can be filed under just needed to get through it and move on. I for for me, I know that there's some fans that are worried about that level of performance, but the reality is that Arsenal are not always gonna play well. That's just not how things go. Most teams don't play well every single game, and I think for the most part this season, we've played really well. This was the first game where I thought we were so under par in terms of what the requirements are, but I do think that there were some outstanding circumstances that made it harder to play our game. One of the biggest ones was the turf. I know that the players made a really good effort to not speak about it or make any sort of um, excuses surrounding the pitch, but you could just tell the way everybody was running, they were running like they did not wanna tweak their ACL, and I understand why, because we have so many games coming up and nobody wants to be outside of contention for those matches, and so this one was kind of one where we had to just get through it. Not only that, let's just put it out there that Bodo Glimt was good. You can see why they haven't lost a home game in Europe for 14 matches or whatever it was because they're a good footballing side and they're on their pitch and other teams are trying to adapt to that pitch and the fact that they're playing good football and they struggle. And Jose Mourinho's Roma held 6, to that Bodo Glimt side. And I think their manager has done a really good job with them. So credit where credit is due. They did play really well and we played poorly, but I can understand why our players were running with their knees bent. They did not want to tweak their ankles, they didn't want to tweak their knees, and so it was just about getting out of there with the W, and so now I think we just have to beat PSV to come top of the group, and we can just move on from this, but yeah, it wasn't a great game, and I don't really think many players outside of the starting 11 made any sort of, play for a starting, a start against Leeds. But yeah, some of that is just unfortunate because the pitch was what it was and the game was what it was. It looked cold out there too, you guys. I was like, damn. BroPro says, big up, Jess. Big up to you as well. Gunnar Thob says, joined a bit late. What's up, Jess? Nothing. Just going through quickly Bodo Glimt so that we can get into the Leeds game because I think that's what most people kind of want to talk about. But yeah, just kind of going through Bodo Glimt and seeing what you guys kind of think about it. I saw that there was a lot of uh a division in terms of Sambi's performance. So I would love to know what you guys think about how he played. Personally, I think he was decent in the first half, very neat and tidy on the ball, did a good Thomas Partey impression, if you will. And then once Bodo Glimt kind of turned up the volume a little bit and the game got a little bit quicker and we didn't have that same level of like easy possession, it became an off the ball match and you saw where Sambi kind of struggles with that. Ayul says first half was okay in my opinion. It was okay. Like it was okay and we got the goal, which was the goal that we needed. It would have been nice to get 2 just so we could have just pulled some of our better players off and just kind of cruise through that second half. But we did get a goal in that first half from Bukayo Saka. I don't care how it came. I don't care what it looked like. We just needed to get the goal. Let's see. Lionide says, actually is more of a chance ripping your ACL on natural grass. Fair enough. Um, for me, it's just the way that the ball bounces, how your feet can get or your boots your can actually get caught into the turf and it could twist. Like I kind of can see why you'd be a little bit more cautious playing on the turf, but I'm not a doctor, so, like, if you're saying that you can turn your do your ACL worse on regular grass, fair enough. Sanjeev says, "Got 3 points and we move on." Exactly. Tony says, "I'm glad our players came home safe." Exactly. That's mostly what matters, right? DJ Oni says, "Yeah, our players were playing cautiously. Even Martinelli, that usually smokes his opposition, couldn't." You could just see, like, the way that the ball was just kind of going, like, all of our passes were just seemed too hard, and that's just because turf, it just the ball just skids a lot faster, and so it just was what it was. I don't think you can really take much from those, and then I also feel like there was a level of conserving energy from our players. You kinda just wanna get through this game with as little of your energy used as possible and move on. And it's unfortunate because I do think in the past we've really enjoyed watching some of our fringe players play in group stages of cups, but we're in a different position now where we can't really play the way that we were playing, in those times because we don't have that same level of quality. That's not to say that our players are not great, but we have to mix our starters with some of our fringe players, and it's just different. We just have to get the job done. And I think that's why you do sense a little bit of disappointment and from the fan base when we play these games and it's kind of like this. It's people remember the days where we used to play our young players, our 16-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds from our academy in the Champions League group stages and just walk through it. It's just a different world now, really. SM3 says, "I'm always rooting for Sambi because I think he might be a decent substitute for Partey, but gosh, he sucks." Oh, man. iGamer says, "3 points, top of the table, we move." Bro Pro says, "Odegaard doesn't help himself on his sunny weather tax allegation, but to be fair, no one really playing that well." Nobody played that well. I mean, beyond Matt Turner, I thought everybody else was just kind of going through the motions, and you don't really wanna see that, but I think ultimately, like, players want to play in games that feel like they really matter, and this one, it just wasn't that, so I would imagine that we would go back to how we usually look against Leeds. That's what I'm hoping. Some people, I think, are really worried that, like, this is the form you're gonna see against Leeds. I highly doubt that. Gunnar Thob says, "Second best player on the pitch, great pass selection, press resistant, but yeah, not very aggressive with his off the ball actions. Sambi could be more aggressive overall, to be honest. 78 out of 100 performance, in my opinion." I guess what's interesting about the whole Sambi conversation is he good enough on the ball where we're gonna be okay with him not being so great off the ball, you know? I wonder because there's players, and we've had them before, that they're so good on the ball that we kind of turn a blind eye to what they do off the ball. And, with Arteta, you always have to do both jobs, we know that, but I do wonder if there's a sense that Sambi's playing out of position now and he just has to do as good as he can, but if you put him in the 8 position playing with the best players, he'll thrive and it'll be kind of okay that he's not so aggressive off the ball. It just worries me a little bit because I'm just like the lack of intensity is just something that nobody else really has in our team. No players that have lacked intensity have survived under Mikel Arteta. So I wonder how he would be the first one, and if he's good enough to be the first one not to have to be intense off the ball. So there you go. iGamer says, "I like Turner. I was impressed by his play. I'm not so nervous about Ramsdale missing for any reason." I mean, with Matt Turner, like you guys know, I've been very like firm that some people were calling him Runnerson early on, and I was like, I thought that was a little bit over the top because we know that number two goalkeepers are usually not amazing. We've been spoiled over the last couple of seasons to have two starting level goalkeepers, but that's not ever what we were trying to do. It was never something that was pre-planned to have that. It was just by circumstances because things were moving around. And so we had, I think, almost like an unrealistic expectation of what we should have in terms of goalkeepers. And then Bern Leno leaves, and then you have Matt Turner come in. And I hate to say it, but I do think some of it just came from him just being American in general. People were just like, he can't be any good. But one thing that the United States does well is goalkeepers. And Matt Turner is never going to look the same as Ramsdale on the ball. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be as smooth. But I think from the time he's come in to now, he's been he's improved in terms of what he's doing on the ball. His little clip passes into the fullbacks were quite good, and he's a great shot stopper, and he showed that as well yesterday. I think he saved our bacon a couple of times. So Matt Turner is definitely good enough to be a number 2 goalkeeper for Arsenal, but again, he's a number 2, and the expectation should not be that he's as good as Ramsdale. That's never how it's ever been. SM3 says, "When Arteta brought in Partey, my heart skipped a beat. Mine did as well. That's when I started to panic. When Xhaka came in, I was like, okay, that's fine. When Martinelli came in, I was like, whatever. But as soon as Partey came on, I was like, oh my goodness." And I think that some of that might have been Arteta not really trusting Sambi in those dying moments off the ball. I thought there were some moments where he didn't have it and we needed to get it over the line. There should be no circumstances in which, Partey comes on the pitch for those dying moments, but we had to do what we had to do, and I think we still have levels to go. I think this also speaks to Arsenal not really being at the level quite yet where we have enough players that are the second string players that are good enough to get it over the line in difficult away matches, and that's a level that they have to improve to, and we probably have to recruit for that as well. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat, says, "Here's a little towards that Arsenal drip." Thank you. "It's hard to stop buying Arsenal apparel. It's so lit. Thanks for all the great shows." Thank you so much for your super chat. I do really appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys don't know, Arsenal have me in a chokehold. It's just every time they come out with something, I kind of feel like I need to buy it. So thank you so much. I do really appreciate that. Gunnar Thab says, "I think the intensity in his game would come with confidence, but I might be projecting because he does have the raw material. He just doesn't look assertive as he is capable." I think also, like, when I watch Sambi, even on the ball, I just find his passing to be a little bit soft, and I just want him to be a little bit more intense in everything that he does. Some players are just very, like, languid and relaxed and stuff like that, but regardless of if that's how you are or not, when you lose the ball, you have to track back and you have to run back hard. And I just even the bare minimum, I'm finding it like Sambi's not doing those things. It's wild. Like, I'm not completely writing him off, but like if he went like how do I say this? I think I would love for Arsenal to go into the transfer window and bring somebody in. And if Sambi had to go out on loan, I wouldn't be upset. So, I guess that's kinda how I kinda feel about it. DJ Oni said, "I said to my friends that I think Turner played sweeper keeper yesterday because that, Ramsdale has ever done. Do you agree?" I said to my friends that I think Turner played sweeper keeper yesterday better than Ramsdale has ever done. Do you agree? Hmm. I think it's interesting. I do think he did a really good job coming out and making sure that we didn't get caught out when they played those balls in behind. Um, I do think Ramsdale has done a good job doing that in the past, so I'm not quite sure if I feel that strongly that it's better than Ramsdale has ever done, but I think he did a really good job in terms of at least being able to show the Arsenal fan base that he's competent. I think that's kind of instead of comparing him against Ramsdale, I'm more comparing him against the Rams or the Turner that we saw early on in that game against that German team, like when he first came in. Remember that in preseason? And so I do think he did a good job, but I'm not sure that I feel that strongly that he's done it better than Ramsdale, if that makes sense. JJ Adams says, "Jess, I actually think Sambi can do what Xhaka does at left center mid 8, but at the moment has no Premier League experience compared to Xhaka." So I do think he can play in the 8 position, but what I'll push back on is that Xhaka is definitely playing the Gundogan position, and that position requires you to be able to make things happen in the final third, and I haven't quite seen that from Sambi as of yet. It's something that, you know, maybe if he played there a lot more often, he would we'd be able to see that, but the way that Xhaka is playing right now, I feel like that's more of an Emile Smith Rowe position than a Sambi position. I feel like Emile Smith Rowe would do really well getting into those advanced positions, making those third man runs, going around the outside, overlapping, underlapping, coming into the center forward position. Um, almost like a fusion of Sambi and ESR would probably be perfect for that position because ESR does lack the passing range that Sambi has, but I think Sambi lacks that quality in the final third. So personally, for me, it's more of an Emil Smith Rowe position in the way that he's playing it now. But if you could kind of put Emil Smith Rowe's best qualities and Sambi's best qualities together, you'd probably have the perfect player to play in that position. And I think that's why any person that we'd want to come in to potentially play that position would be freaking expensive. Freaking expensive, like very, very expensive. But I hear what you're saying. I do think Sambi could do more at the 8 position than the 6, but do you think he's gonna score goals? Do you think he has assists in his locker? Let me know. Let's see what you guys are saying. Line-Eyed says, I like the style Bodo Glimt was playing. Invite the press from Arsenal forward line, puncture it, and outnumber the midfield in quick transition. I mean, he's a good coach. Knudsen, I think that's what his name is. I thought he was very complimentary of Arsenal, but also spoke about what our weaknesses are. And I think he did a good job with his team exposing what our weaknesses are. And yeah, like I really like him. I'm sure that their coach will be in the Premier League at some point. Like he's definitely somebody that I could see a Premier League club poaching and being like the next Potter, the next Frank, one of those because he's doing a lot with a little. And if you just gave him better players, he might could do even more. But yeah, they were playing right around us and through us, and it was hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. Gunnar Thab says ESR on the right for me, the player I feel like are describing a lot more like Martin to me. Fair enough. The truth sets free says, although he might be, I've never asked him because he doesn't seem as into football as I am. He's into American football. Who y'all talking about? Oh, you guys are talking about like each other, your family members and stuff. Great. So let's move on from that. We put that behind us and move on to the weekend where we're going to be playing against Leeds. And yeah, I don't know why I'm feeling like not nervous, but like a little bit like this could be somewhat of a banana skin because we're away from home and Leeds, they're not amazing at the moment. Like I do think that they've struggled just a little bit. Um, Jesse Marsh obviously has done a decent job with them, but the table would suggest that they're lower mid-table. So they're not anything like amazing, but their form is pretty much like lost draw, lost draw, lost draw. Which you're probably like, well, then why are you nervous? It's because we've come off such an emotional high from 2 really, really important games at home where we had our fans behind us and it was big games and the sun at the Emirates and all that kind of stuff, and we'll be away from home at a difficult kind of away ground where they'll be right on top of us, and Leeds does have a good pressing system. We can play through them, but they have a good pressing system, and if we're not on top of it, they can damage us, and I think when you watch how they played against Chelsea, I feel like that's kinda how they'll play against us, where they'll use what they do from their press to try to put us under pressure and make us make mistakes and try to capitalize on those mistakes. Leeds are interesting because they give up quite a bit of goals, it feels like. Let me see. It was 1-0. So some of these games have been close. 1-0 loss to Brighton, a 1-1 draw with Everton. They got, you know, killed by Brentford 5-2, which was a strange game. They had some postponements as well, 2 postponed games. They had a 0-0 with a red card against Villa. Against Crystal Palace, they lost 2-1. So they don't give up a lot of goals, but they also are not scoring a lot either, which is interesting. So this seems like straightforward, but I still feel like Leeds has the ability to damage us if we are not on top of it. Any team can do that to you, but they have enough quality in their team to do that. I wonder who's fit for them. I never really know. With Leeds, they always seem like they have quite a bit of injuries. Bamford seems to be back, but he could be injured. You never know with him. Not quite sure. But they have good players in Harrison and Rodrigo and Brendan Aronson. Their midfield is quite, sturdy with Mark Roca and Tyler Adams. So it's a different team and kind of a different style than we've seen under Bielsa, but they still like to press and they still have players that can hurt you. Now, I think their biggest flaw is those two at the back. Whoever they play at the back, whether it's Strike and Koch or Cooper and Koch or Lorente and that Robin Koch, all of them are just not good defenders. They're not good defenders at all. And so I would expect us to be able to take advantage of that. But I think this is more of a banana skin because of the emotional high that we've been on and being at the Emirates. And then we need to be able to go away and put them away in the first half, 2 goals, and just kind of cruise from there. You don't want to keep it close, and you definitely don't want to make a mistake early. So, yeah, I don't think they're an amazing game or amazing team, but I still feel like Arsenal need to be really, really on their game, really, really on their game. And I wonder if Arteta will do any rotation. I wonder if he'll, maybe look at Vieira and see if he could maybe start this game instead of Odegaard, or if we'll just continue on with the same group. I also wonder what's going to happen at the back. Zinchenko is still a doubt. So although I thought Tomiyasu did a really, really good job against Salah, I do think you probably bring Tierney back in. I think he deserves a start in the Premier League, especially since Zinchenko may not be ready to go. You keep your normal center backs the way that they are. I mean, maybe this is a game that maybe you do play Tomiyasu at left-sided center back and just kind of rotate things and keep things fresh to make sure that we don't drop off at all after this really big emotional game, these last two emotional games. Jesus should still, he should be starting. The same front three should be starting, but I wonder if you just make a couple of tweaks, in one in midfield and one in the back, just to keep people fresh and to keep things kind of moving and shaking. Reggie Perry says Arteta will put out the same, except Tierney will come back. Denver says, I feel like it will be a relatively tough game, but we'll see it through. iGamer says, yeah, Jess, there are no easy games. If we slip, Leeds can hurt us. We need to remain focused. Jay Adams says, Jess, do you think the only way to challenge City properly is to exit the Europa League early to reduce congestion? We have to see when we get there, to be honest. I mean, it really just, I mean, would I want to risk, the Premier League to chase the Europa League? No, because I think we have to make sure that by the time we get to the business end of the season, that top four is pretty much wrapped up. Like, we need to be a shoo-in for the top four in March, April. Like, it needs to be like, okay, as long as we just don't capitulate, like, we're good to go. So I really wouldn't want to push in the Europa League, like play our number one team there. I mean, but here's the thing, you guys. Once we get to that point, we probably will be playing our best team every single game. So we just have to wait and see. But I would not, for me, generally, I would not risk the league for the Europa League, because I think it's going to be more difficult to do what we need to do, which is ultimately get top four. It's gonna be more difficult to do that in Europa League than it would be to do in the Premier League, especially with the good start that we've made. So we'll have to see, but I don't think you'll ever see Arteta bomb out or throw games or anything like that. I think he will take both pretty seriously for as long as possible. Let's see, let me just star that really quick. Let's see. Frankie says, New York City in the house. Welcome, welcome. Says Arteta should use the same lineup against Liverpool. Tommy was great. Come on, you Gunners. Yeah, I feel like it was so specific. And this may be my bias speaking, and also because I watched the Tierney interview. If you guys haven't watched it, he did an interview with Football Daily, and he was very mature in the way that he spoke about Arteta calling him the day before the game against Liverpool to let him know that he wouldn't be playing, he wouldn't be starting, and Tomiyasu would be there for a tactical tweak. And he spoke about being gutted that he wasn't playing, but that's not going to stop him from working hard. But I do think at some point, especially because Zinchenko is not fit, that he needs to be rewarded for the hard work that he's put in. And I thought he was due the start against Liverpool, but because of the tactical tweak, he didn't get it. So for me, Leeds don't have Rafinha anymore. I remember at the end of last season, Arteta put Tomiyasu on Rafinha to stop him, but they don't have Rafinha anymore. So I do think you could go ahead and put Tierney in there, and maybe you could do something like put Tomiyasu at left-sided center back, let Gabriel rest, but Gabriel didn't play against Bodo Glimt, so he'll probably start. So maybe just Tommy drops to the bench and or maybe he plays right back, but I do think Tierney deserves the start this time around. DJ Oni says, like the video and subscribe, please, guys. Thank you so much. Crispy says, I feel he'll play Tierney. He wants all the players getting games. I agree. JJ Adams says, Jess, I wish Abba had Tierney's mindset. Let me just be real, you guys. I couldn't give a shit about Aubameyang right now. I know that the narrative is still narrativing, where I think ultimately what people were hoping is that we would be doing poorly and Aubameyang would be doing well and they could banter us over it. But ultimately, Chelsea are doing quite well and Aubameyang is doing well with them, but we're also doing well. And I would not trade Gabriel Jesus for Aubameyang right now. And so everybody wins, everybody's happy, and I don't want to go backwards. We are where we are, and I think everything worked out for the best. For me. Damon says Tierney is a team player and this will motivate him. The team is developing a winning culture and all the players want to be a part of it. Exactly. I think that's so important that everybody seems bought in and everybody is willing to do their part. And I feel like I may be projecting, but I do feel like when we, were in the Europa League over the last couple seasons, there were players that didn't felt like they were too good to play in those games and would almost be annoyed that they would have to come into those matches here and there. But you see, Odegaard comes in, Saka comes in, these Saliba, they all play in these games and do their part. And that's exactly what you need from an entire team. It's everybody. Olivier says, whoever didn't play 60 minutes Thursday will play Sunday, maybe. Good point. iGamer says, Awuba sounding like a bitter ex. We've moved on. Everybody's moved on, and it seems like everybody is happy. The Truth Sets Free says, are we going to be easy on Nelson 24? First start since 2021 FA Cup. Should I get my earplugs because I'm a baby? He wasn't awful. Chest control was on point on a long ball. Burnt 3 players. Decent cross. Clutching at straws. Thank you so much for your super chat. With Nelson, it's hard to take anything from that game because I do think that players were a little bit afraid to get hurt on that turf. I just didn't see the same. I feel like if we had been at the Emirates, it would have been a little bit different. But it wasn't great from Nelson. It wasn't great from Marquinhos. And it wasn't great from Nketiah. All of those players that are kind of on the fringes didn't really show themselves to be players that could come in and start games right now. So I think, or should, they haven't shown that they should be, in that starting 11. So I think I would wait a little bit on Nelson, give him some more time, because ultimately, what else are we going to do? We're not getting to a transfer window until January. So there's a couple more games where he can play and really show what he's worth. It's just unfortunate because when we play against PSV, I do feel like we'll go with a stronger lineup, which probably won't include him, but you have to take the chances when you have them. But it's really is unfortunate that it came against Bodo Glimt away from home where nobody wanted to turn their ankle. So yeah. Let's see. JJ Adams says, Jess, what do you think of Xhaka's new contract talks? I think it's fine. I mean, I think at this point I am open to the idea that Xhaka is probably going to end his career at Arsenal, and he's more than deserved, the praise that he's been getting over the last year or so, and it's fine for him to stay. as long as Arsenal know, like, and I think they do understand that, like, we still need to improve the team and we need to future proof that midfield because I mean, maybe the idea is to play Odegaard and Fabio Vieira, but I just don't know if that's, enough, really. And Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka are both in their 30s. El Neni is also 30 and potentially going to leave at the end of the season. So there needs to be some future proofing. So keeping Xhaka around is not a big deal. I think having somebody with the leadership qualities and somebody that's been around for a while and stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, it's funny because I always thought that Thomas Partey would end up being a Fernandinho for us, and I think it may end up being Xhaka or both of them. So it's fine as long as Arsenal still go out there and bring in a midfielder that can take us to the next level. And that's not to shade Odegaard and Fabio Vieira. It just feels like we're missing one. We're missing one in there. And in regards to the Douglas Luiz thing, he signed a new deal with Aston Villa, and so I think that would all but rule out the idea of us coming in for him in January. I'm 100% okay with that, because he was, for me, an El Neni replacement and nothing more than that. So El Neni got injured, and we don't have that backup to Thomas Partey that we would prefer to have, obviously. So Douglas Luiz would be taking that position, but would he be the heir to the Thomas Partey throne per se? No. He was never going to be that player, and so totally okay with that. We're not going to go in for him, I'm pretty sure, and hopefully Arsenal have another idea on the type of player or a good player that they can bring in January. I think it's more than fine that it's not him. He's not it's not the end of the world. He's definitely not somebody that, I mean, we would not have even went for him had El Neni not got injured. So there you go. Um, let's see. So yeah, that's the Douglas Luiz news, is that, he signed a new deal with Aston Villa, which I would assume all but rules out the idea of us going in for him in January. And he probably knows that as well. Like, I'm pretty sure Kia's like would have told him, if there's a chance you could go to Arsenal in January, then, you know, don't sign. But, and who knows what they offered him. So it's fine. JJ Adams says, Jess, it's crazy to think that Xhaka could be at Arsenal for 10 years in his career. It's looking that way, but he will probably end his career at Arsenal and start coaching. I feel like that's the path that he's going for. And I think it's fine at this point, as long as we continue to improve the squad and don't sit around and act like Xhaka and Partey are going to be around forever. Colin Young says, you can't get hitched to players if you plan to sustaining high levels. That's just real. Boss Mode says, Jess, did you hear David Moyes' comments about Arteta? I mean, I did hear what was out there on TalkSport. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but David Moyes basically said that he got unnecessary criticism while building the team and he's done a really good job and, those types of things. I expect David Moyes to back Arteta. He was his captain at Everton, so I would expect him to back him, and he knows what type of player/manager Arteta is as a player and probably would be as a manager, and he's seen the work that he's done, so. And the funny thing about the the feeling in the actual footballing like world, like people that actually are in and around the game, playing, coaching, all that type of stuff, the way that they describe Arteta and what he's doing has been so different to what the online discourse has been and what the likes of like TalkSport and these types of, publications have put out there. In general, people that know football and are working in football rate him highly. And so I think that speaks more to the reality of who he is and the respect that he has in the industry versus what's out there with the talking heads that don't really know shit. So but yeah, I think that I would imagine that um that David Moyes would back Arteta based on their history anyway. Lewis Christie says anyone actually in the game rates Mikel. Saksham says we cannot find much players better than Xhaka right now. I would say the one player that still stands out to me that I feel like would have been a perfect Xhaka/Partey, like you could put him in either role and he'd probably be fine, is Bruno Guimaraes. I still don't know what happened with that. I mean, Paqueta I can live with because Fabio Vieira I do think has a really high ceiling, and he'll probably be that type of player, but an Arsenal player. But Bruno Guimaraes, it makes no sense. I feel like we handed Newcastle the perfect player to build their new project around. I'm not sure that they could have found somebody better than that. And so every time I watch him, I'm trying to will myself to believe that he wasn't the right player, but the more that I watch him play, the more that I think he would have been perfect for us, but I mean, I'm not sitting up at night like worried about it or sad about it. I just feel like that was one that did get away. Um, so yeah. Crispy Rice says, I think Jesus picking Arsenal says a lot about Arteta. I think him and Zinchenko picking Arteta does speak. These are players that want to go to the next level in their career. They want to still win things, and they're trusting Arteta with the prime of their career. I think that says quite a bit as well. Lionide says Vieira and Odegaard playing together will be more common than people think. It's all about ball possession and controlling the play. We were talking about this yesterday on the football terrace, and somebody, I forget who said it, but they were like, I don't think Vieira and Odegaard work together. And I actually disagree. I think that it's going to take a little bit longer for those two to, first of all, they don't play with each other very often. So you have to learn how that person plays. Vieira mostly plays on the right hand side. So for him to play on the left, he kind of had to adjust how he was going to play. And it was a difficult circumstance for them to be playing together anyway. And I think we lacked um, a good base. Sambi was okay in the first half, but I think if we had somebody a little bit stronger at the base of midfield, they would have been able to hold up those two and it would have been fine. But you need to have strong fullbacks and a strong central defensive midfielder to have those types of eights because they're not really going to be two-way players like that. So yeah, I think we will see it more and we just have to let it cook. We have to let it, get going. We can't just expect things to work the first time that we saw it. So I'm not. I think the plan is to have Vieira and Odegaard and ESR as our eights, but I would like us to add one more in there. But that might be just me being greedy, and maybe I'm just not patient enough to let those players grow into the player that I'm probably asking for us to buy. you know. Um, Saksham says, "I'm not expecting much in January. We all know Arsenal how Arsenal does in transfer windows. I'm not expecting much either, but I do expect somebody to come in. Um, Especially, the journalists that have spoken about Arsenal going into the transfer window are quite reliable. And so, no, I'm not expecting us to go in and buy 3 or 4 players, but I'm expecting somebody to come in. And I think some of this will depend on how close El Neni is to the squad. So, if and I think Arsenal are waiting until they get into the Champions League to buy that midfielder. That's how I feel. I don't think that they want to cheap out on somebody now when there could be somebody when we get into the Champions League that we probably can't talk to now that we could talk to then. So Nenny's fitness, I think, will have a part to play in terms of whether or not we'll go for somebody in that midfield position in January. But we need another attacker. We need another winger or something like that because if one of Saka or Martinelli goes down, I think we could be in some trouble because as I've said this multiple times, I know Marquinhos is not ready to play in the Premier League. I just don't think he is. I think he'll be loaned out in January, which is fine. That doesn't mean he's shit or anything like that. But with Nelson and Marquinhos kind of being the options in those positions and ESR and Vieira being more midfielders than wingers, I think the position that we might see get looked at is probably that winger position, but we'll see. I think it also depends on who's available because in January things are so tough. So yeah. Let's see. Crispy Rice says, I heard we have 40 million. Where'd you hear that from, Crispy? Where'd you hear that from? Lion Eye says this January transfer window will be different mostly because of the World Cup in Qatar. Yeah, everything is going to be different because of the world. Everything is just so, yeah. Everything is so insane because of that World Cup. It's going to feel like 2 different seasons in one. So we'll see how things progress. But I do think we will bring in somebody. But if anybody's sitting here thinking we're going to bring in 3 or 4 players, I think remember, this is Arsenal. Boss Mode says, if we beat Leeds, Southampton, and Forest, it will shake the Premier League to its core, one game at a time. But yeah, we've gotten through. And I think, honestly, I feel like the best thing that could have happened is for that Manchester City game to get postponed, because we were able to beat Liverpool and Spurs, but now we can kind of go back into games that are a little bit not easier, but they're really winnable games, and we can kind of wrap up October feeling like we can win the next 3 games. But yeah, I think we should be able to win all 3 of these games, but they're banana skins for me, especially Leeds and Southampton, because they're away from home. We have to be on top of it. Kafu Kafusno says, Bellingham suits us. I just don't think we're gonna be, in that, if that makes sense. I don't think we're gonna be in the Bellingham race. But I would look at players like, and this may sound crazy, but if Arsenal do wanna go out there and bring in a midfielder, that's gonna be a statement type signing, which I think that's what we're waiting on. We want a statement midfield signing. I would say I'm not even gonna say. It feels, like, crazy to say, but it depends on where Jude Bellingham goes. I think he's the key to a lot of this. Like, if he were to end up at Real Madrid, somebody might look at Valverde, and then Declan Rice is still there. A lot of people like Declan Rice, and he's somebody that will be on the move with 1 year left on his deal as well. So, yeah, we just have to see how it works out, but wouldn't be surprised if we looked at those players. Did the what happened? Do you guys see that? Did the lights go out? You guys, I think the lights, oh no. I think my thing burned out. Hold on. Something just happened. Give me a second, guys. I think my ring light just went out. Oh no. Doesn't matter. We'll just continue on. Spooky settings. Exactly. Let's see. Just hold on. We're still here. Everything is kind of normal, but not at the same time. The Truth Says Free says, you always taught us that when you're wrong, you throw your hands in the air and admit it. Don't be egotistical and stubborn. While I was wrong about Arteta and he was right about Aubameyang, nothing wrong with saying that you got something wrong. It happens, We are in scary settings, you guys. Yo-Yo says Valverde over Rice. But yeah, I mean, if they bring in Jude, then they'll have 3 players that are young that are gonna be playing those midfield positions, and Modric is still there. So that might open up, room for Valverde to go, but you have to be in Champions League to even start talking to players like that. Frankie de Jong will probably be available as well. So those are statement signings, and I think, Arsenal are probably waiting to get into the Champions League to do those things. But yeah, so we need to just finish the job. So yeah, last but not least, I know this is just kind of like a lighthearted convo. You guys, these are my favorites. We already kind of spoke about how we think that Arsenal will probably play the same lineup, so we probably don't have to do like a lineup for this one. But I just want to know how you guys think the game is going to go against Leeds. Who do you think is going to score? Who do you think, how do you think it's going to go? Does everybody think we're going to win? What is your score predictions for Leeds versus Arsenal? Let me know. While I look and see what happened I really think my light just like exploded. Like that's really what I think just happened. And it's making me really sad because I've only had it for like a week or 2. Yeah, you guys give me your predictions. Bam. Let's see what you guys are saying. All right. James Bond says 4-2 to the Arsenal. Big score. Zich says 2-0 to the Arsenal. 4-0 to the Arsenal. Boss Mode says 3-1 to the Arsenal. It went out again. Great. Oh my god. True Sets Free says 4-1. Ayul says 2-0 to the Arsenal. I think 2-0 as well. Like if I have to put out, like, I think it's gonna be 2-0. a tough game, but I think we'll get it done. All right, guys. Show's done. I will be on the football terrace. I do need to go now because then I need to figure out what just happened with all of my settings and all of that. But I really enjoyed the show. You guys are amazing. And of course, you know, we will do something after the Leeds game. But take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in a little bit if you guys decide to come to Football Terrace. If not, I'll see you guys after the Leeds game. Bye, y'all. Love you guys.